And welcome back to WealthWise with me, your host, Jordan Kimmel. We have a very special guest, a colleague, a friend. Sam Stovall will join us. Everybody knows Sam from basically every major financial network. But before we bring Sam on, I want to take just a couple of minutes to kind of share what I'm seeing in the market and share what I'm sharing in our newsletter, the Pro Investor Insights, and the weekly piece that I'm also sharing where we give you the week ahead. Well, we've been warning and just sharing, it was a super narrow market. The drum was beating pretty quickly. They were removing chairs as the game goes on. We all know how that game goes. Well, today, they actually pulled the chair out, and we saw the biggest decline in the S&P for a single day in over 350 trading days. We saw NASDAQ take out some key levels. And we see people getting a little bit warm under the collar. And the question is, where do we go next? Well, what I will tell you is I look for clues more than than give, my clear procrastinations on what's going to happen. I look for clues. The new lows have been muted. I think that's going to change. I think the volume on the downside, may come in right now, and we're in a seasonal time where we said be ready for a pullback. Everyone said, "Oh, please give me a pullback. I want to get in." And then the pullback comes. You know what happens, right? People run. They get scared by lower prices. But what we'll do is we'll take a real quick break here right now. I want to save the powder for Sam to see what he's thinking. It's Sam Stovall from CFRA. We'll be right back with this quick break.
Watch 13 WHAM News anywhere on any device with Stir. Download the Stir app and choose Rochester. You get local news and more than 20 other TV channels. And the best part? It's free. Go to your app store and download Stir today.
Welcome back with WealthWise. It's me, your host, Jordan Kimmel, and Sam Stovall. Everyone recognizes his name. You see him on every major financial show over the years. He is the Chief Investment Strategist for CFRA. And Sam, great friend, longtime colleague. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here, Jordan. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's a great time to be here because these are unusual times we live in, and there's too many people that trade on moving averages, and they have no idea really what's going on. So I think you have about the greatest market experience, knowledge of trends and cycles. We'll spend some time to get into that. But, knowing the approach of CFRA, you don't care what happens this afternoon, this minute. You're looking at least 6, 9, 12 months out in terms of really thinking about what to do. So why don't you kind of, give us, we're coming into this presidential election. We've seen, all kinds of indications. What are you telling your clients, and the message you want to give to Wall Street right here?
Well, the message I want to give to investors is that 12 months down the road, I think things are going to be looking pretty good. We're going to be celebrating the second anniversary of the start of this bull market on October 12th of this year. And yes, that traditionally the third year of bull markets tend to be a little dicey. But like with demographics, if you make it past 65, you have a great chance of making it to 85. So if we can weather the third year of this bull market, then 4 and 5 are years that we probably can look forward to. But also indicating that election years can sometimes be pretty challenging, especially if we start with such a high reading in the first quarter. That was the 11th best performance going back to World War II. We were in the top 10 in terms of first halves, and also very strong in terms of the number of new highs experienced this year. But typically we tend to see digestions of these gains along the way. And yes, we did have a 5.5% digestion earlier this year, but more times than not, we end up with declines of in excess of 5% twice in years like this. And I think this could be the beginning of that second decline.
Right. And everyone kind of saw it coming. The market was overheated. It was just kind of getting narrower and it was getting euphoric. Some people said it really hadn't even got started. It felt euphoric to me, honestly. The AI focused the concentration on every day, every name. But clearly, you be careful what you wish for. We wish for the market broadening out. We are seeing that, which is great,
Mhm.
but there's some major trends that are coming up that are undeniable. One of them is going to happen in election day in November. We don't know what the outcome quite will be, but you've done a lot of history on the cycle. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, the new president comes in, if it's a new president, and says, "Oh my God, what did you hand me? This is worse than I expected." And they start to talk about the problems. They let things kind of unravel, and then they spend a couple of years putting them back together as the hero. Do you see next year as being that kind of a challenging start to potentially new president?
Well, it's certainly a possibility because, I mean, technically, Trump is not a new president, but he would be putting in new actions and probably undoing a lot of the prior administration's actions. And Kamala would probably want to put her own imprint on things. Usually, they try to push through in the first 2 years because by the midterm election year, a lot of times, if you start out with a red or blue wave, then it tends to go the other way in the second half of the first term. So if there's a possibility that we have a red wave where Trump becomes president and both houses of Congress are controlled by the Republicans, he'll probably only have 2 years in which to push through legislation because by midterm elections, typically you end up having one or both houses then switching sides. So I would tend to say that much of the changes are likely to occur early on.
Right, but good for the market, Sam, or challenging?
Well, it tends to be good for the market in general. When you do have a wave, there have been 7 blue waves going back to World War II. There have been 3 red waves, and traditionally the full year return ends up being better by about 1.5 points. So maybe 10.5+% for the the wave versus about 9% when you don't have a wave. So
Right.
and it would make sense because if you have a Congress that is of the same party as the president, whatever the president introduces, you'll get a rubber stamp by that Congress, and that will tend to be supportive of stimulus legislation.
Right. Right on the head. Nailed it. So let me bring out this now. So what people are waiting for right now is they're looking for the parachute of money to come down. They're looking for the Fed to bail everybody out, the Fed to finally take its foot off the gas. Um, Not everyone might not understand what are the trends when they start to lower interest rates, and is that always, you know, the silver lining, the thing that the cavalry that comes out, if they cut rates a quarter of a point, Sam, is that really meaningful for the market itself?
Well, I think when we were talking before we were recording, we were talking about investors playing musical chairs. And I like to say that they're always trying to play musical chairs, trying to out anticipate the other as to when the music will start or stop. And the same goes for economics, for monetary policy. Typically, it takes about 11 months between the last rate hike and the first rate cut. And in that time period, the S&P has gained more than 15% on average, with the market being higher in 6 of 7 times. So only once did you have a decline, and that was in 2000. However, once the Fed starts to cut interest rates, the performance really starts to lag. The large cap stocks are up only by about 3% 12 months out. And the problem is because the Fed has usually waited too long to cut rates. And as a result, we've gone into a very slow economic environment. And so I think the worry is that by the time we do see the cutting of interest rates, the unemployment rate will have been ticking higher. The yield curve would have bottomed and will have started to steepen. And usually those are two indications that we are headed for more challenging times rather than a sigh of relief that the worst is behind us.
Right. And it's so important to bring that history and that knowledge in. And people are kind of begging to get their finger hit with a hammer, and they just haven't done it a lot, so they don't know. It might not be a great idea.
Well, nailed it, pun intended.
So let me ask you this. So, there's two things that nobody can compete with you on. One of them is history in the market, and the other one is tying songs and some lyrics to the current market. I'm gonna give you a couple of thoughts that I thought about. Knowing you coming on, I look, Sam, for the top 100 jukebox hits. The ones that came out to me were "Living on a Prayer."
Oh, well,
Bon Jovi, are we living on a prayer here? I mean, certain people think that the trees will grow to the skies with no recession. We've cured the financial cycles, and we're living on a prayer. What do you think
yeah.
of that one?
Actually, I was thinking coming in on a wing and a prayer from World War II. That just shows you the era of music both you and I listened to. But I think you're right, because just a short time ago, the S&P 500 was trading at a 37% premium to its average PE over the last 20 years, the highest PE since the dot-com bubble had begun to burst. It also represented 33.1%, which was 0.5% less than the peak back in August of 2020. And also, when you look at the relative performance of the cap-weighted S&P 500 tech sector versus the equal-weighted S&P 500 tech sector, we were trading at more than 2 standard deviations above the mean, again, seen only back during the dot-com bubble. And tech itself was trading at a 78% premium to its long-term average PE. So, essentially, I was thinking more like Brooke Benton singing, "It's just a matter of time."
Well, you know what? You're throwing out some scary dunes and some tough dates, and I agree with you. And the fact is that I have too much experience in the market. I've seen the Four Horsemen. I remember Sun Microsystems being unstoppable because of the server market. They had a 95% share, and then they lost 95% of the value. Uh, we saw so many crazy things, but I want to go now just to the economy, for 1 second here, because we talk about, well, look, the consumer is resilient, and so the consumer, as measured by the 1%, are red hot. They're spending on anything, they're doing anything they want. I believe that we're seeing things about delinquencies in certain mortgages and cars, and that if you're not in the 1%, life's getting a little bit more challenging with costs. And this idea that the consumer is wild, um, to me, is an outrageous cheerleading whole.
Well, I think you're right that we have been seeing an increase in delinquencies, where debt levels, the credit card usage, et cetera, has been on the rise. We're not at levels that we saw back in 2008, but certainly the old adage is that the consumer will keep lending until the consumer will keep spending only until the banks stop lending.
Right.
And so with the banks continuing to be willing to lend, but at the same time, the worry that the consumer has really spent all of their pandemic monies. The one percenters or so are spending money more on experiences than on products. Just trying to head overseas on vacation, people are saying don't do it, simply because there's going to be no room at the inn, and you'll end up having to shuffle as you bump elbows walking past everybody on the sidewalk. So
Right.
The economy seems to be doing fairly well, but yes, there is a bifurcation of who is benefiting and who is not.
There's really no question about that. And, I guess, as I look towards, the market itself, I know that, I've shared with people, not only are some things stacked up against us, but hey, it's summertime. Read a good book. And I threw out a link of my top 10 favorite books. And Sam, yours is one of them. And super simple, Seven Rules of Wall Street. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. It was a book because I've done money show presentations for years in Orlando, Las Vegas, San Francisco. I'll be doing one in Sarasota in December. And they always wanted me to do a presentation on teaching people about sector investing. So I came up with the idea of sector rotation strategies using old Wall Street sayings, such as let your winners ride, but cut your losers short. As goes January, so goes the year, sell in May. And then who says there's no free lunch on Wall Street? And what I found is that all of these old strategies, old adages still work.
Right.
There are just, a little bit of nuances that have to be applied. So this book is out of print, but it's still available on Amazon, on eBay, and quite frankly, I wouldn't pay more than $20 for it.
Well, it's down in my library, and what I liked about it was the simplicity, the clarity, and your history and cycles and understanding sectors and rotations bring me to the very last question. And so I know that there are people who are going to just keep raising the flag on tech, 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 tech all the time. There are patterns, there are seasons, there are times to step on the gas. There's times to actually uh pick your fruit,
Sounds like
otherwise
the Birds song of turn, 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 but go ahead.
well so here it is. Should I stay or should I go? It's the clash. What do you say?
Well, I think you should stay. I think you probably should sit on your hands for a little while. Reason being that I think that the bar has been set too high for this second quarter earnings reporting period. And now I believe investors are worried that there could be other mega cap tech stocks that disappoint. So I think we just need to be resetting the dials. But the reason I say sit on your hands is because history can actually serve as virtual Valium, that understanding stock market pullbacks, corrections can help calm your nerves. What I mean by that is if you understand that we have had about 65 pullbacks, 5 to 10% declines since World War II, it's only taken a month and a half to get back to break even. We've had about 25 corrections, declines of 10 to 20%. And even when you've had 17, 18, 19% declines in the market, it's taken an average of only 4 months to get back to break even. So by the time you've worked yourself up into a frenzy, you have annoyed your advisor with daily phone calls to say, lighten up on my positions. By the time the advisor says, fine, I'll do it if you just stop calling. Is usually when the market is already on its way back to break even.
Right, Sam, it's great perspective. I love what you say. And through the wars, through the recessions, through the sell-offs, through the assassinations, I'll tell you a real quick story, and then I will respect the time here, and we'll let you go. But I remember being in the industry, and my father-in-law was a really nice guy, and he came to me and said, look, I had him in American funds, Sam. I said, I'm not going to handle your money. Put everything in American funds. You just let everything roll. And he said to me, hey, listen, son, you know anything about the Saddam Hussein? I mean, this guy's got a war. This is going to be a problem. I would like to move to cash. So I said, I'm not your advisor. Call up American funds. They'll move all of your money into cash, and you can move it back in whenever you want. Well, we all know that was a pretty fast war. The market rallied. I never really brought it up again with my father-in-law, who remained in cash for the rest of his life because there was more and more scary things. That was about Dow 2000, 1990. I was trading under 2000, and it gives you a little idea how much what time can do for you, time in the market. And there's always something to worry about, Sam. But I'm never worried when I see Sam, his perspective. And he said, stay, folks. He said, should I stay or should I go? But probably not in super ultra mega tech and certainly not on margin, right?
Absolutely not on margin.
Well, Sam, listen, it's great to have you. Literally one of the clearest top voices on Wall Street for the last couple of years. I'm not going to date you, but you see Sam on every major show, and there's a reason why. So, Sam, thanks so much for joining us. One more time, I hope we'll see you soon. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jordan, a friend since the mid 1990s.
Yeah, we'll say it. I'm proud of it and consider you really one of the nicest guys on Wall Street. I'm going to make you blush. Sorry about that. But folks, let's wrap up. WealthWise with Jordan Kimmel, Sam Stovall, as always, one of the most educating guests you'll ever find. Thanks so much again for the time.
My pleasure.
We'll see you soon, folks.